Hi, Witness here. I got a lot of questions during the league about the Explosive Arrow Pathfinder build that I was running and about my guide. This video is answering a lot of the build specific questions that I was getting, so here's an FAQ. Is this build ready for the Breach League and update 2.5? Yes. The only noticeable nerf to this build so far is the nerf to Rumi's block chance. This build still functions as is and is ready to go. I've started 2 leagues with it, and it works well enough if you know what you're doing, and is generally great at map clearing and opening up the atlas. As far as right now, there is no new item that should be added to this build. I've never used Grand Spectrums. The math works out right now that you need 2 extra jewel slots to have the damage you previously had in the past leagues. Why Pathfinder? Is it just for the Dying Sun? No, this build was good before the Dying Sun existed. It's still pretty strong without it and can handle tier 16 maps without the Dying Sun. Pathfinder is incredibly defensive with flasks, has 100% chance to ignite, has easy access to shock with Vingtars, has super high movement speed with Quicksilver flasks. It gets higher block, higher max resistance, and higher physical mitigation, and has pretty long uptimes for these flasks during mapping. Those are pretty much all the things you want in an EA character. Still though, I have to get a Dying Sun flask, right? No, since the build relies on single target burn, there really isn't much need for it. This is my general pack clear on a 5 link on a tier 15 enfeeble map with Life Leech as my 5th link. Pack clearing has never been a problem for any Explosive Arrow character. There aren't a lot of situations you run into in the game in the current state where a boss wouldn't be burned down quickly with my single target ignite and will also be next to a wall for the overlap to matter that much. And in that case, usually the GMP setup will work just fine. The time it would take to get most bosses next to a wall would just be better spent burning them down already. So you're saying the Dying Sun sucks, right? No, it's clearly a great flask. It offers a lot of utility to the build and adds a lot of clear speed. You can even remove AoE points from the tree once you get it. You can avoid doing the weapon swap with GMP setup and just use your single target as your AoE clear. Though I don't recommend that in hardcore, it's much easier to deal with Reflect with the GMP setup. Also, it's a lot of fun shooting this many arrows all over the place. But what I'm saying is, it's not needed to do any content in the game, and depending on the cost, you might not even want to buy it. I killed pre-nerf core Malachi before it existed. My tier 16 Guardian guides that I have here were without it and with worse gear than you can get now in the leagues. Buy it when you have everything else sorted out and you have the money to throw around. What about Reflect rares? You should only do Champion or Elementalist, Explosive Arrow and get Essence Worm or you'll die, right? So-and-so said they're the best ascendancies, so I have to get them. The fear most people have with Explosive Arrow is Reflect. In all of my hardcore leagues playing Explosive Arrow, before and after Ascendancies, before and after Essence Worm, I have never died to Reflect and I've never avoided them. Just don't do your highest single target damage on a rare mob. All you need to do is to whittle them down with your GMP setup arrow. With your high life pool and burns, you'll eventually kill it without dying. All you need to do is fire a couple of shots and let it die that way. Even if you are an Elementalist, you'll likely ignore Reflect maps. Even if you could run them, they're pretty uncomfortable. So, dying to Reflect is not really a problem if you play smart. So choose whatever you like. Saying things like Champion or Elementalist is the best at this point is pretty irrelevant, since there's no important enough content that you can't do on a Pathfinder with the same level of gear, for example. How do you level? And when do you start using Explosive Arrow? Start as a ranger, use elemental bow leveling, use shrapnel shot until I could use blast rain at level 28, using blast rain, weapons elemental damage, concentrated effect and added cold or lightning. While leveling with blast rain, I do get the following gems to level on the side. 2 explosive arrows, preferably at least 1 with quality, 2 fire penetrations, 1 flammability, 1 chance to ignite. These will help the transition into Explosive Arrow become much easier because Explosive Arrow gets a lot of power just from leveling up. The easiest point of transition is when you have the following. Enough points to grab Elemental Equilibrium and Blood Magic. For me, this is around 47 after killing Piety. one piece of gear with 2 green sockets and 2 blue sockets. This is for Frenzy, Greater Multiple Projectiles, Curse on Hit, Flammability. One piece of gear with flat lightning or cold damage and having no flat fire damage on your gear anywhere. This is for Elemental Equilibrium, and it will make them weak to fire when you hit them with either the Stacking Arrow or the Curse on Hit. And of course, Quill Rain. After that, leveling is pretty straightforward if you follow the trees I have on the guide. For pack clearing, I use Explosive Arrow, Greater Multiple Projectiles, Less Duration, Fire Penetration. After that, you can use Slower Projectiles, Life Leech, Increased Area, Chance to Ignite, anything you want. I use Life Leech early on because it helps when my life regen isn't high enough for Explosive Arrow. For single target, I use Explosive Arrow, Chance to Ignite, Concentrated Effect, Fire Penetration. After that, it's a combination of Slower Projectiles, Less Duration, and Power Level 4. And Power Level 3 is not worth it. You get Elemental Overload, why not Resolute Technique? Elemental Overload is on the way in my passive tree. Resolute Techniques is too many points far off. With the high attack of Explosive Arrow with Quill Rain, you don't actually need Resolute Technique. Also, starting as a ranger, you get more accuracy if you start as another class. And with the 5% base crit chance and your high attack speed and the 8-second duration on Elemental Overload, it's pretty reliable. If you're worried about missing, get one piece of gear with good accuracy. This is usually a helmet or gloves, and that would usually drive down the price. It's a lot of damage to pass up for Overload for no real reason. It's effectively another link. Should I get a 5th link early on? What should I put in it? A 5th link will go a long way to help your single target more than your pack clear. You'll generally be fine on 4 link for pack clear. If you have no other means, buy a cheap 5 link chest and use it for your single target. This carried me to 90 before. If you want a 5 link Quill Rain early on, look at the price of Jeweler's Touch and buy the cheapest Quill Rain you can get. Jeweler's Touch ignores the item level requirements for sockets and can end up saving you a few chaos in the end. When do I lab? There's no hurry for normal lab. Cruel Lab is the big one. It gives you chance to ignite, it gives you elemental damage and elemental status immunity on flasks. I usually get it when I hit Merciless Dried Lake. Merciless Lab can wait a while until you're comfortable. There's no hurry for Uber Lab since all you really get from it is flask duration, flask effect, and bleed removal on flask use from Master Surgeon. This helps a lot when you have a lot of unique flasks, but early on you don't really need it and a bleed flask will take you the whole way. Master Surgeon over Veteran Bowyer? Veteran Bowyer sounds nice on paper, but for me, from experience, it messed with elemental equilibrium too much in situations that annoy the build the most for me to keep it on. The random chance to hit with fire damage on any arrow attack can result in a smaller damage on the boss, leading to a smaller ignite and the burn after to take longer. As I said before, pack clearing is not really an issue on this character in terms of flask or for damage, so single target damage on bosses is my focus. What about enchants on gear? No glove enchantments matter that much. Damage penetrates elemental resistances if you haven't killed recently is good, though the Uber Lab enchant is pretty rare and you might not be able to even buy one. The Life Leech enchant, if you have killed recently, is probably the best one to get after that. For helmets, explosive arrow damage is pretty nice, though if you have high increased damage from jewels or grand spectrum jewels, the area one might be better. If not the Dying Sun, what do you prioritize in terms of getting big purchases? Comb's Heart, Rear Guard, Rumi's Concoction, 1/6 link Quill Rain, 2 good opal rings with fire damage, and good jewels. After that, getting a secondary curse amulet. Even though I use Vinctar, I never actually go and buy Vinctar. I buy the staffs, make the map, sell the clear for the spots to lower the cost of the flask, or potentially get the most expensive flask from it and sell that for a lot of money. I did buy the Dying Sun this time around just to use it and see if it was worth the price. At the time of me buying it, it was 400 chaos in the Hardcore Temporary League. I would say in the Hardcore Temporary League it's not really worth it. Could be in the Softcore League though. Taste of Hate is not really needed even though I use it a lot in these videos. A base health flask does the job just fine for the vast majority of the game. Taste of Hate is really a luxury quality of life improvement that means I don't have to care about added cold damage on maps when I roll it. And I don't have to use a sapphire flask. I bought the Dying Sun because I had the money lying around. I also bought the Dying Sun before I bought Taste of Hate, if you have the money for any of these things. But this is really due to my playstyle. I don't care about clearing easy maps as quickly as possible. I like running higher end maps and not having to worry about damage rolls on the higher end in a hardcore temp league. Your focus might be different depending on how you play and where you play. After 90 and having good gear, feel free to buy whatever you want. Tier 15 maps and below don't have the highest end gear requirements for this build. Can this build do Shaper? Yeah, several players in my player guide have done it. I only had one set to try in standard and got to the third phase before breaking the set. The thing is, you need a lot of practice and you'll have to fail a few times if you've never done the Shaper before. But eventually you'll get it. The 4 bosses, Phase 1 and Phase 2, and the Void Walkers are pretty easy enough for me on my first try. Phase 3 is where I had the most difficulty and needed the practice. I'll eventually try to get enough sets to try it and make a guide around it, and I'll try to make it around gear that you can get on the temporary hardcore league. But in the meantime, all you need is just practice and knowing when to attack. If you have any more questions, let me know or write a post in the forum guide. There have been plenty of helpful people answering questions. In any case, good luck out there.